It's not the actual pain that drives us, but our fear of something that will lead to pain. It's not the actual pleasure that drives us, but our belief, our certainty that somehow taking certain action will lead to pleasure. And think about the person who goes out and buys a sports car. You take someone like Doug or Wally as an example. Wally goes out and buys a beautiful red sports car, obviously for the pleasure of going out and having some fun, maybe picking up a new fiance that he has now. So as he's sitting there contemplating a very expensive purchase on a fabulous piece of equipment that's very expensive, for him, the pleasure that he thought he was going to gain for it was well worth it. But for some, they don't have that vision or that clarity of understanding about that. So it becomes an interesting conundrum for people. And obviously, it's one that we can relate to in many, many facets. I mean, think of weight loss or savings for retirement. We all want to save for retirement. We all want to have money at the end of our careers. And yet, for some reason, the vast majority of Americans do not do it. We all go through life making our income, and then somehow when we get 55, 60, 65, we're like, man, I don't have any money. I hope Social Security's still there. And that's a problem. And the problem is that right now that fear of taking that $500 a month or $1,000 a month or whatever that magical number is, $50 a month even, and taking it out of our spending and saving it and putting it away towards retirement, I don't gain a lot of pleasure from that right now. I don't gain any pleasure from it for 50 years, 30 years, whatever that time frame is. Whereas right now I can take that $1,000 and I can go buy an iPhone. And that's the challenge you have in a dental office, is you're sitting there competing with them, not saving it, wanting to spend it on an iPhone, wanting to spend it on a beautiful red car, wanting to spend it on a Rolex, wanting to get immediate pleasure from it. And the challenge is when they're sitting there chatting with you, they're struggling to see the pleasure they're going to gain from that crown that you're prescribing to them. They're struggling to understand the pleasure that they'll get. So the other option is do we play on the pain side of the equation to motivate them? And in some cases, I think it's very, very appropriate. And, one of my favorite things that I've suggested for everybody to say when they're talking to somebody is, Darren, the treatment that I'm prescribing for you today is going to hurt the least and cost the least today. I don't know what it's going to be like tomorrow, because tomorrow you could eat a salad and fracture off half that tooth, and now all of a sudden that restorative process could cost twice as much and hurt a lot more. I can only tell you what it costs today. I'm not clairvoyant. I have no idea what tomorrow holds. And I think that's an interesting illustration of that, and one that obviously America, when it comes to savings and retirement, does not seem to understand. They don't seem to understand that if they take $50 a week or a month and put it in a retirement plan, that when they go to retire, that $50 a month, that could be $500,000 in savings and retirement by the time they get to that point. And instead of doing that, they continue to spend the $50 a month on Starbucks, which is where I'll probably go as soon as I'm done here. And so it becomes an interesting conundrum of understanding how people think and what drives them to do action, right? And that's what you want out of them. You want action. You want them to say yes to treatment, move forward with it, and get them to do something, and all too often they're just not doing it.
Right. Darren, I really love this conversation. I mean, when I think back to some of the things I've read and studied from Tony Robbins talks a lot about that during our entire lifetime, we're either moving away from pain or we're moving towards pleasure. And typically, we don't make changes in our lives until the point where the pain becomes so painful that we are then driven to make a change. Change is one of those things that is extremely hard. And when it comes to the going to the dentist, I think a lot of people, number one, they have fear. And then what you talked about is that it may not necessarily be that fear, but we've got to show them what the pleasure is. And I'll tell you this, of course, I'm not in the dental field, but I will tell you this. When it comes to dealing with human beings, I think one of the things that we have to keep in mind is that we have to get to the emotion beneath the need. And we all have the need. Let's take your retirement example. If I was to think about my retirement, I can think about putting, as you said, $50 away a week or $500, whatever it is, but that doesn't really motivate me. To think about, well, you'll have money when you retire. What does that mean? I don't know. But if I had a financial planner that sat down and said, Doug, what is it that's most important to you in your retirement? And I started talking about, well, I'd love to be able to travel. I'd love to be able to have that red sports car and not have to worry about making payments on it. I'd love to have my home paid for and all those things. And, above and beyond anything else, I'd love to be able to go see my kids whenever I wanted to. When that financial planner came back to me, instead of just talking to me about $50 a week will make your retirement nice, he could come back or she could come back and say, Doug, what I'm telling you is that $50 a week, it means you're going to get to go on those vacations that you always wanted to. It means you're going to drive that sports car. It means you're going to be able to see your kids at any time you want. Above and beyond anything else, Doug, you're going to be happy in your retirement, and you're going to be calm. You're not going to be worried every day waking up that you don't have enough to get by. So it's about getting to the emotion beneath the need, and I think every time we make a dental recommendation, we've got to figure out what is that emotion that would drive our patient to go ahead and take the acceptance of whatever's being recommended.